The wind howled like a dying animal across the barren ridge, dragging snow across the ground in bitter streaks, as if it too mourned the day. Sarah Monroe stood beside the open grave with her daughters clinging to her sides, their faces chapped raw by the cold. Her husband's coffin, simple pine, hammered shut with crooked nails, rested awkwardly in the frozen hole that had taken half the morning to dig. The sky above them was white as bone. Reverend Tate mumbled the final scripture, his words stolen by the wind. No one wept, no one except the girls. Ella, the elder at 9, buried her face into Sarah's side. Gracie, only 5, whimpered against her mother's coat sleeve. Sarah held them both, unmoving, her face a statue carved from grief and frost. Her black veil clung to her face like morning itself had frozen to her skin. The in-laws stood a few feet back, a ragged line of sour-faced settlers and grim-looking women. No hands reached for comfort. No kind words offered. Murmurs rose like steam from their lips. She cursed him, dragging him to that damn ridge. She was always too proud. Thought she was better than us. Now she's just a widow with 2 mouths and no land. Sarah heard it all. She didn't flinch, didn't turn, just stared at the wood box in the ground like her soul had already followed her husband down into it. By dusk, they were back at the Monroe homestead, a crooked cabin on a plot barely worth the ink it took to deed it. Her brother-in-law, Amos, waited at the door with arms folded, a worn Winchester cradled in one. "You can't stay," he said before she even stepped through. "Ain't enough food to keep you and the girls. And this land, well, it was Ethan's. He's gone now. I married him. Built that barn with my hands. Nursed his fever. Bore his children," she said, voice low but steady. "Still don't make it yours." Behind him, his wife Miriam stood with a bundle of blankets, eyes darting like flies. "We set the old miner's shed with straw. It'll keep you through the night, lest you head for town." Sarah didn't argue. She didn't plead. She took the blankets. Pack what food was given. 3 apples, a stale loaf, and some jerky, so dry it cracked when she bent it. She didn't cry as she helped the girls carry the last of their belongings into Miner's shed, half collapsed under the weight of forgotten years and snow. That night, the wind shrieked louder than any coyote. The shed groaned like it remembered better days. Sarah wrapped her daughters in every layer they had, then lay beside them on the dirt floor. She pressed her body around them, her spine to the cold. "Mama," Ella whispered, "why do they hate us?" Sarah didn't answer. Her breath steamed in the dark. She stared at the moonlight slicing through the cracks in the wall and wondered the same thing. She thought of Ethan, not the man in the coffin, but the one who had first smiled at her with wind-burned cheeks and a laugh that could melt snow. She remembered their cabin dances, his guitar out of tune, their girls twirling in bare feet. She remembered promises. But he was gone, and promise meant little when your belly was empty and your daughters shook like leaves in the cold. Sometime past midnight, the fire she'd managed to spark with a flint and torn Bible pages flickered out. Gracie whimpered in her sleep. Sarah sat up, teeth clattering, and stood to check the shed door. It creaked open on rusted hinges. Outside, the world was white and moonlit. The wind had settled into an eerie silence, as if the land itself was holding its breath. She stepped out into the snow barefoot, scanning the dark tree line. Their movement, a figure, too tall for a settler, too quiet for a drunk. She reached into her coat and gripped the pistol she'd taken from Ethan's chest before the in-laws laid him down. "Who's there?" she called, her voice ablaze against the quiet. No answer. Then crack. A sound close, not a branch breaking. A gunshot? She dropped to her knees, heart hammering. Nothing moved. Back inside, she found the girls still sleeping, unaware. She lay beside them, her hand still on the pistol, eyes wide, listening. Dawn came slow. The sky blushed pink above the hills, though the cold remained savage. Snow had drifted against the shed walls, nearly sealing them in. Sarah dug them out with her bare hands, fingers burning from frost. She set out to gather wood, what little she could find. Halfway to the creek bed, she stumbled upon it. A fresh kill. A hare, throat slick clean, lying atop a flat rock dusted in snow. still warm. Sarah knelt, hand trembling as she lifted the animal. Someone had left it for her. No tracks, no scent of horse, just a hair and a blood-slicked mark in the snow. She returned to the shed in silence, skinned it, cooked it over a fire fed with twigs and anger. The girls ate in silence, chewing with eyes wide. Sarah said nothing, but her eyes watched the trees. 2 nights passed, each colder than the last. Each night, she saw him just for a second, a shadow at the ridge, a tall, still figure. She started talking to him when no one else was near. "I don't know what you want," she whispered once, brushing Gracie's hair as the girl coughed. "But thank you, whoever you are." She never got an answer, but on the 4th morning she found more, a pouch of jerky and a flint stone left on a stump outside the shed. Next to it, a piece of oiled leather bearing a single word scrawled in charcoal. "Stay." That night, Ella asked, "Mama, who's helping us?" Sarah tucked her in close. "I don't know, but he hasn't hurt us, so maybe he's a good kind of strange." As snow fell again, thicker this time, the fire burned stronger, and Sarah, for the first time since Ethan's death, allowed herself to close her eyes, not with fear but with fragile hope. In the distance, just beyond the tree line, a man stood watching the flames flicker through the slats of the shed. His coat was black bear hide, his face lined and weathered. His rifle rested easy in his hands. He didn't speak, he didn't move, but he had come for them, and he wasn't leaving. Not yet. The days blurred together in shades of gray and white, cold light filtering through the warp with slats of the miner's shed. Sarah's hands had gone numb days ago, but she still forced them to move, splitting kindling with the old hatchet, stitching ripped clothes with scavenged thread, pressing warmth into her girl's limbs with her own body like she could will them back to health. The wind never stopped screaming. Not outside, not in her chest. Gracie's cough grew deeper, a hollow, rattling thing that stole sleep from all of them. Ella tried to hide her fear, clutching the doll her father had carved, its wooden face half frozen, the paint faded by grief and snow. But Sarah saw the panic building behind her daughter's brave blue eyes. The stranger's gifts continued. Snared rabbits, a cured deer hide, a packet of crushed herbs left in an oilcloth pouch. Sarah used the herbs in boiling water, hoping the steam might help the girls breathe easier. The man hadn't spoken again, hadn't come close, but he was watching, always watching. One evening, as the storm calmed into a silent snowfall, Sarah found fresh tracks around the perimeter. Not footprints, circling patterns. Protective, intentional. She stood alone near the edge of the woods, snow crunching under her boots, her husband's pistol heavy at her side. The sun dipped low, painting the frozen world in violet hues. She knew he was near. "You've seen what they did to us," she said into the trees, voice quiet but certain. "You keep feeding us like a ghost. But if you're here to do more, come out. I've got bullets and questions." A raven burst from a pine branch above. She flinched, heart hammering. Then movement. The man stepped out from the tree lean, like a shadow torn loose. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a long coat of stitched hides. A rifle hung from his back. His hair was black as ash, streaked with silver, tied back beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His face was carved from hardship, cheeks scarred, jaw grizzled, eyes unreadable beneath dark brows. He didn't speak, just stared at her like she was both wild animal and wounded thing. Sarah raised her chin. "You've been helping us." He nodded once. "Why?" A pause. Then, "Because they won't." His voice was deep, rough from silence, like boots over gravel. He took one slow step forward, then stopped again. "You got a name?" "Sarah Monroe." He nodded again like the name meant something. "I've got daughters," she added, more guarded now. "I know." Another step closer, not threatening, measured. "You don't have to be scared of me," he said. "I'm not scared," she lied. He almost smiled. "Good, 'cause scared folk pull triggers too quick." She hesitated. "You gonna tell me your name?" He tilted his head, called her Black. "Used to be scout for the Union Army. Now I keep to the trees." "Is that what you do, watch women freeze in shacks?" "I watch the guilty wait for justice." and the innocent pay for their sins. His words struck like flint, sharp and sparking something painful. "You know my in-laws?" she asked. "I know they've stolen graves and land, and buried what ain't theirs in both." Her breath caught. "How?" she asked, voice trembling. He looked past her, toward the shed. "I knew Ethan. A long time ago. He weren't always bad. But he turned. The land breaks some men." She stepped toward him now, eyes narrowing. "If you came for revenge, don't circle my girls. Don't feed us and then break us." Calder shook his head. "I didn't come for you, but maybe I was meant to find you." She didn't know what to make of that. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded cloth. Inside was smoked meat, hard cheese, and something that smelled of honey. He held it out. "Lemme eat. Tomorrow I'll bring more. You want to hunt? Learn to shoot straight. I'll teach you. World don't wait for you to get strong." She took it slowly, their hands not quite touching. "Why are you really doing this?" she whispered. His jaw clenched, eyes cold and distant. "Because no one came for my family when they needed saving. I was too late." Then, just like that, he turned and vanished into the trees. That night, the girls ate like starving wolves. Sarah didn't stop them. She watched, silent, tears pricking her eyes for the first time in days. Not for Ethan, but for this moment. A strange man in the woods had fed her babies when bloodkin had left them to die. By firelight, she thought of Calder's words. About graves and land, about guilt and justice. She thought of the rumors Ethan never spoke of, the whispers about an old gold claim, stolen from a wounded scout, of fire spreading across a cabin in the high ridges, the bodies burned beyond naming. She wondered if Calder had once stood in a field like hers, burying his own. The next morning, she found a pile of firewood stacked neatly near the shed. A steel trap lay beside it, freshly cleaned. Calder kept his word. Days passed, then a week. Calder never entered the shed, never stayed too long, but always brought something, supplies, lessons, advice. He showed Sarah how to gut rabbits, how to check the wind before shooting, how to read animal tracks, and follow them to shelter or danger. His hands were scarred, but steady. His presence never warm, but never cruel. The girls began to laugh again. Just little things. Ella found a smooth stone and painted it with berries. Gracie sang the same two-note song every morning. Sarah found herself smiling at their nonsense, and her own reflection in a cracked mirror that didn't look so hollow anymore. One evening, Calder showed her how to shoot the rifle left by Ethan. She missed the first 2 shots. On the third, the tin can toppled. He nodded, approving. "You got something in you," he said. "Anger," she muttered. "Good. Anger's better than despair. It burns longer." Later that night, Sarah sat beside the fire, watching the flames curl and snap. Her fingers worked a bit of leather into a cord for Gracie's doll. The girl slept peacefully beside her, cheeks pink from warmth, bellies full. She heard a branch snap outside, turned, expected Calder. Instead, a figure stepped into view, one of Amos's men, thin, sneering, clutching a rusted revolver. "Well now," he drawled, "ain't you made yourself cozy?" She rose slowly, hand behind her back on the rifle. "Amos wants to know what's taking so long. Thought you'd freeze by now." "Tell him we're doing just fine," she said coolly. He stepped closer. "Not how this works, darling. You don't just survive. You disappear." The rifle's weight settled into her arms. "You can disappear first." Before he could blink, a shot rang out, not from her rifle. The man dropped, howling. His leg gushed red. Calder emerged from the trees, rifle already chambered again. "You get to crawl back," Calder said, stepping close. "You tell Amos. Come near this family again, and I'll burn every godless acre of his." The man whimpered as he dragged himself away, leaving a red smear in the snow. Sarah stared at Calder. "You didn't kill him." Calder lowered his weapon. "Not yet." She turned her eyes back toward the flame, where the girls still slept, unaware. For the first time, Sarah felt something stronger than fear inside her bones. It felt like fire, and she was just getting warm. Snow melted early that spring, not from warmth, but blood. The sun clawed weakly through the clouds as Sarah stood with a rifle cradled in her arms, her boots sinking into thawing mud. Wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of wet earth and something darker, gunpowder, old grief. She kept her gaze fixed on the narrow path that wound down Widow's Pass, the only way her in-laws could come without breaking their necks on the cliff face. Calder crouched nearby, loading his second rifle with calm precision. His coat was stripped down to a leather vest, scarred arms bare despite the chill. Beside him lay his satchel of traps and tools, snare wire, sharpened stakes, and a jagged tomahawk worn smooth by time and use. "They'll be here by sundown," he said, not looking up. Sarah nodded, jaw clenched. "Then we'll be ready." Her daughters waited in the cave behind them, a narrow opening hidden by brush and stone. They had food, water, a lantern. Sarah had kissed their foreheads and told them a lie, that she and Calder were going hunting. The truth was less kind. A week had passed since the wounded messenger limped home and lit the fuse under Amos Monroe's pride. Sarah had expected retaliation. Calder had expected war. The tracks they found 2 days ago confirmed it. 5 riders, 1 wagon, enough firepower to kill a family, burn their shelter, and make it look like the winter had simply finished what grief had started. But winter hadn't finished them. It had forged them. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched long across the pass, Calder stood and swept his gaze over the ridgeline. "You remember the plan?" Sarah nodded again, tightening her grip on the rifle. "I keep them in the funnel. You flank. And if you see Amos, I shoot." Calder offered her the ghost of a smile. "You don't hesitate." "He won't." She thought of Ethan's coffin, the whispers at the grave, the shed with straw and frostbite for comfort. She thought of Amos's smugness, of his wife's eyes avoiding hers as they were cast out like plague rats. "I won't." The wait was silent, tense. Not even the birds sang. Then hooves, distant at first, then clearer, echoing through the pass. Sarah knelt beside a boulder, heart slamming, finger on the trigger. Amos rode in first, gray coat flapping, shotgun across his lap. Behind him, his 2 sons and 2 hired guns. The wagon trailed last, stacked with oil barrels and bundles of dry straw. They weren't coming to negotiate. As they entered the funnel, Calder vanished into the trees. Sarah rose. "Not one more step," she called out, voice iron. The men pulled up their horses in surprise, hands twitching toward weapons. Amos squinted at her. "Well now?" And you groaned teeth. "I've had M. You just never look close." He laughed, cruel and loud. "You think you can stop us, little girl with a rifle?" "No," she said, shifting her stance. "But I'm not alone." As if summoned by the words, a trap snapped shut near the lead horse, causing it to rear and buck. One of the men flew sideways, his arm twisting as he hit the ground. Gunfire cracked through the pass. Calder emerged from the ridge, rifle raised, shooting with the rhythm of a church bell. The first hired gun fell before he reached cover. The second scrambled for a boulder, only to catch a bullet through the thigh. Chaos. Sarah fired once, twice, her shot grazing Amos's coat, making him duck low behind the wagon. "Damn you, woman," he shouted, cocking his shotgun. "You think this makes you righteous?" "No," she muttered, reloading. "Just alive." Calder moved like smoke, silent, precise. He flanked the second son, knocking him unconscious with the blunt end of his rifle. That left Amos. Sarah rose from cover, rifle steady. He saw her. A flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe memory. Maybe fear. Then he raised his shotgun and fired. The shot hit her shoulder, spinning her to the ground. Pain exploded through her arm like fire. She screamed but didn't let go of the rifle. Through the haze, she saw Calder charging. Amos fired again, but the second barrel clicked dry. Calder tackled him from the side, and the 2 men went down in a violent tangle of fists and fury. Sarah crawled to her knees, gasping. Blood soaked her coat. Her fingers were going numb. Calder wrestled the shotgun away and slammed Amos to the dirt. "This is for my family," he growled. But Amos only spat. "Your family were thieves. Just like you. just like her. Calder raised a shotgun, then paused, looked to Sarah. "You want it?" he asked. She stood, trembling, one arm useless. She walked over slowly, took the weapon from him, and stared down at Amos Monroe. He grinned, even bleeding. "You gonna do it, preacher's daughter?" Sarah's hand tightened on the grip. Then she lowered the shotgun. "No," she said. "I'm gonna let you crawl back and tell the town what happened here. Tell them we didn't die. Tell them you tried and failed." Amos's smile faltered. She stepped back. "You do that, or next time I'll stop aiming for the coat." Calder stepped aside as Amos staggered to his feet, half limping, half crawling. The surviving son helped him to the wagon. The others lay groaning in the dirt, not dead, but broken. By the time their wagon creaked out of the pass, the sun was gone and night had taken the hills. Sarah fell to her knees, finally letting the pain in. Calder was there in a heartbeat, ripping cloth for a bandage. "You're lucky," he muttered. "Could have been worse." She winced. Was it luck? "No," he admitted. "It was grit, and one hell of a bad shot on his part." She chuckled, just once, breathless and sharp. When they returned to the cave, the girls ran out crying, clinging to their mother. She hugged them close with her good arm and whispered, "It's over." But Calder looked past her into the dark, eyes still hard. "It ain't over. Not yet. But it started. The reckoning started." And in the fading light, Sarah Monroe, widow, outcast mother, stood tall against the firelight, bloodied but unbroken. The mountain had taught her something. You don't wait for justice. You make it. The fire danced high in the stone hearth, casting long shadows across the cabin walls. It was a new place, modest but solid. Calder had felled the trees himself, stacking logs with a precision born of solitude. Sarah helped shape the walls, lay the stones, mend the roof. Each board nailed with a purpose. Each stone stacked with defiance. Not just a home, but a statement. We survived. Outside, the wind carried the first hints of summer, damp earth, pine, and smoke from distant fires. But the snow still clung stubbornly to the north face of Widow's Pass. The land remembered. Sarah's shoulder had mostly healed, though it still ached on cold mornings. She'd learned to favor her left arm, retrain her grip. The rifle hung by the door, polished, loaded. It wasn't fear that kept it close. It was certainty that the world still watched. The girls thrived like spring wildflowers. Ella ran barefoot through the grass now, her giggles rising like songbirds at dawn. Gracie followed her everywhere, cheeks plump with good meals, eyes bright again. They called Calder Mr. Bear, teasing his gruffness. He pretended to grumble, but carved them toys in the evenings when he thought no one noticed. One night, while the stars burned low and the embers hissed in their bed of ash, Calder sat across from Sarah at the table. He rolled a knife edge across a whetstone, rhythmic and slow. "I'm heading out tomorrow," he said without looking up. Sarah set down her sewing needle. "Where?" "Town." Her fingers paused. "That's not safe. Which is why I'm going alone." She didn't argue. Instead, she leaned forward. "To what end?" He looked at her then. The light flickered over his scarred face. "To make it clear, there's a line now. What happened at the pass wasn't a warning. It was a promise." Sarah held his gaze. "You think they'll listen?" "No," he said, "but they'll believe." She studied the man before her. He was harder now, but steadier. The rage he carried had cooled into something colder, deliberate, dangerous. But there was something new, too, a tether, one that bound him to this cabin, to the girls, to the woman who had once stared death in the face and asked it to try harder. "Don't get killed," she said finally. He grunted. "Can't. Promise Gracie I'd teach her to ride." He left before dawn, slipping into the woods like he was part of them. Sarah watched until he vanished between the trees, the rifle on his back catching one last glint of starlight. 3 days passed. On the 4th, thunder rolled across the valley, not from the sky, but from horses. Sarah stood outside the cabin, rifle in hand, the girls behind her. The dust cloud rose like a storm, dark and curling. 4 riders this time, draped in Monroe colors. One bore a black flag. A man dismounted. Not Amos. Someone younger. Amos's nephew, maybe. Wide hat, mean grin, hands too close to his belt. "Sarah Monroe," he called. "We come under truce." She said nothing. He stepped forward slowly. "Word is you and that outlaw killed kinfolk. That you took land never yours. That you harbor a fugitive." She raised a rifle. "Word is your people never learned to knock." He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We ain't here to shoot," he said. "We're here to offer a deal. You hand over the man and we walk away. Quiet. And if I don't, we torch the cabin. Take the girls. And you," he licked his lips. "Well, you can guess." A shot cracked from the trees. The man spun sideways with a howl, his shoulder erupting red. The other rider scrambled. Too slow. Calder stepped from the ridge, rifle leveled. His voice boomed across the clearing. "I told you once. Come again and I'd end it." Sarah didn't wait. She stepped forward and fired. One rider dropped. The other two turned to flee, but Calder moved faster. Another shot, then silence. Only the man with the wounded shoulder remained, crawling backward toward his horse. Calder approached slowly, lowering his rifle. "You take this message back," he growled. "Tell your kind that this family is under my protection. Tell them if they ever cross Widow's Pass again, they won't return." The man whimpered something, nodded, and limped to his horse. Sarah watched him disappear. Her rifle lowered, but her pulse didn't slow. She turned to Calder. "You think that's the last of them?" He shook his head. "Not by a long shot. But word will spread. Men like that, they fear legend more than they fear bullets." Later that night, while the girls slept safe in their beds, Sarah and Calder stood beneath the stars. "You said once you came too late for your family," she said, "but you weren't too late for mine." He looked at her, quiet for a long moment. "You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever find again," he said. "A reason to fight that ain't revenge." She reached out, took his hand. They stood there, the thunder fading, the fire behind them glowing steady. By spring's end, the cabin would grow. A new corral, a well dug deeper. Chickens clucking in the yard. No one would speak of Amos Monroe anymore. His name would fade into the dust. But the name Monroe would live on, etched not in shame, but in resilience. And when people passed through Widow's Pass, they'd speak in hushed tones of a woman and a stranger, of a war fought in the snow, and of a fire that refused to die. Because some reckonings don't end with blood. They end with thunder and the echo of a life reclaimed. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Some stories aren't just told, they're survived.